So I've been asked a couple times this week, how do I make my relationship go from good to great or from challenging to good? I've been making some videos, dropping some information, giving lots of hints and tools, but I've been asked a couple times this week, what is the big picture for changing a relationship? And I want to talk about these two things. One, how to take a relationship from challenging to good, and then how do you take a relationship from good to great? And the first step, how do you take a relationship from challenging to good? I think the first thing is to look at your attachment style and understand how the two of you are relating to each other. What are the needs you're bringing into the relationship? What are the unmet needs you're bringing into the relationship? And if you can start to understand each other's style and how these can work together or work against each other, it really takes you really far. It's a big, huge first step to solving a lot of problems. I'm not going to go a lot into that because I've done so much around attachment styles, but the basic idea is if some person's sort of avoidant and they shut down or go away when there's tension, the other person's anxious and they go towards their partner wanting more from them, the more that person wants from them, the less the other partner wants to give and pulls away, and vice versa. That's a huge early dynamic that you can get a lot of mileage from resolving earlier in your relationship. I think the next thing to really look at has to do with how we manage our emotions. I'm going to talk about emotions from two different perspectives. The first is we need to learn how to manage and kind of modulate our emotions so that we can be really present to ourselves and present to our partner without, on one hand, getting so upset that we lose our ability to think or to feel rationally, kind of like whether we go into a high anxious state or a high anger state or a high stress state. That's kind of going into fight or flight. Or the other place we can go into is that freeze state where we numb out, we disassociate, we disconnect, we just want to be alone. Learning to avoid or work with those two extremes so we can come meet in the middle, I think is the first step. And there's a lot to be said around that. And this has a lot to do with what happens when couples start to fight or get into arguments or have long-standing resentments. Working to bring us back to the present where we can talk is really important. But the second piece of this is, when I talk about managing our emotions, it's not about suppressing our emotions, because in order for a relationship to be really powerful and to be vibrant, it's important that both of you are bringing your fears that you might have about the relationship to bear, your hurts, your anger, to be able to express all those things in a positive, constructive way. And I think this is probably like that dividing line between a relationship that's really in trouble to one that's good, is maybe you can put a lid on all those things and really focus on the fun times. But to go from good to great, it's important to be able to fully express yourself, fully go for that satisfaction in your relationship, and understanding your partner and understanding them well and being understood by your partner. So once you're able to fully express your feelings, the question is, what does the relationship start to look like if both of you are kind of unleashing your full selves? And this is when it gets really exciting and sometimes a little tricky. And so part of this is then when you really get in touch with your own feelings and you know what it feels like when you're angry and you're not pushing it away or managing it, when you know what it feels like when you're excited and you're not pushing that away or managing it, then you can start to tune into your partner. And when you're able to really understand your partner, we call it mental mapping, where when you go into a situation, you already kind of know how your partner is going to respond. So we're way now beyond these cyclical fights where the same thing happens to trigger your partner. They respond the same way, and then you counteract the same way. We're getting past that to really understanding and knowing your partner and responding in a way that's going to both meet your own need and meet their need. And this does take a couple of skills. It takes understanding your own needs and expressing them, understanding and really reading, resonating, and really feeling deeply empathically with your partner, so that it's almost like you're feeling for both of you in a way that's not codependent, that allows you to both get your needs met. And this is like a higher level of harmony that can bring a lot more joy and satisfaction in a relationship. And from this place, it's important to then go down and start to resolve all these little issues that sometimes are in the back burner, sometimes you learn just to put up with. You want to get to a place where you're not necessarily tolerating a bunch of unresolved stuff. You learn to resolve it one way or another. Either you let things go and accept your partner the way they are, or you ask for the kind of change and you feel satisfied with the way that change happen, but they're not just things that you hope one day will happen and that you live with. And this is like a huge negotiation. It requires both people to take action and both people in the relationship, excuse me, and both people in the relationship to be willing to stretch. So sometimes when we go ahead and change parts of ourselves or do things we wouldn't normally do, it feels like it's kind of codependent. But there's a way that if we're both orienting towards a higher vision of the relationship and a higher vision for yourself, then we can both actually step up to meet our partner's needs and in some ways become a better person in doing so. And think about any time you've been called to be like a great leader, maybe a great parent. Maybe you've been called to go into a situation for a job that was a real stretch for you, but when you stretch yourself into that, you found it expanded your capacities. Maybe you found more joy and satisfaction, more flow, more challenge. That's the way a relationship can really feed you. So I think that if I was going to answer the question again, to kind of review it, the first step is to understand your patterns that are keeping you stuck and the patterns that are keeping your partner stuck and that you are both locked into. The next step then is to learn how to really bring yourself out of extreme emotions so that you're able to feel what you're feeling, but in a way you can act on it and express it responsibly. I think then as an extension of that is, as you deepen your sense of yourself and deepen your emotions, how do you really get your needs met in your relationship and become a kind of person who gets their needs met and asks for what they need, but also gives what your partner needs so that there's a real mutuality. And with that comes a deepening sense of self and a deepening feeling in your body, a deepening presence in the moment, not holding on to resentment because you're able to handle things more quickly. And then with that, you're able to meet your partner and understand them and see them more accurately because the defensiveness is gone and you're really able to be there for them and for yourself. And with that, you get this higher level of attunement, this higher level of resonance. And this is where a lot of intimacy comes in. This is where being more deeply connected than a lot of people have ever experienced can come into play. And from here, you really are moving through and you start to really form a vision of what your relationship is based not on what you thought you had to settle for, but what you really want. And the more you decide what you want, and the more you start to create that, the more satisfied you both become. So there is a whole transition of moving these deeper desires into a reality. And I would say that that's how I see the trajectory from going from a challenging relationship to a good relationship to a great relationship. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk about this. Feel free to message me and I'd love to talk. Thank you much. Bye.